is that I am God that is beyond your understanding. I make the stars shine. I make the heavens, the universe. I make your soul. I make everything in the whole universe work and happen and create. Why do you think for 1 minute that I would come and try to do harm to you? Why do you think that me, who is beyond even your understanding, would possibly be that petty to come and do this to you? Finally, Job says, you know, you're right, God. You are beyond my understanding. I don't understand this. But I know that it's not your doing. He says, I know that you are good, and that you are love, and you are God. And at that point, God restored everything he had twofold. His wife went on and had 10 more sons. He was blessed. He got a chance to go to his friends and say, I told you so, told you so. So everything good started happening, but he had to come to the realization that God wasn't doing it to him. That God is all good. So it comes down to then, why do good people suffer? And why is there suffering? It's because we cause the suffering ourselves. What makes us miserable, what causes us to be in conflict with one another, is our insistence that we have a particular view of things. That we say, oh, this is awful. Isn't this awful? This person's terrible the way he acts this way. I'm terrible about this. I'm a bad person. I'm doing this. Oh, God, why are you doing this to me? All of these views that we instill in ourselves, particular view of how we view things and people, what we deserve, what we don't deserve, what we want, what we don't want, what's our right, what is wrong, our view of self, and our view of death. But these views are just views. They don't have substance. The only truth is the ultimate truth, and that is love. The rest gets in our way. There's this man, he lived in Minnesota, good man. He was getting on up in age. His wife passed away. His son went to prison. So he writes a note to his son in prison, goes, son, I would love to be able to plant my potatoes this year. Your mom used to love me getting out in that garden, playing those potatoes and her fixing all kinds of wonderful things from them. He says, but I'm just too old. I know if you were here, you would turn to soil, that you would dig up my garden for me, my plots. He says, but I know you're in prison and you can't. So I guess I have to forego this year my garden and just kind of just sit back and know that all is lost. Well, his son shoots back a note to him, says, my God, Dad, don't let him dig up that garden. That's where I hid all the guns. And of course, the jailers read everything that goes out of the prison, right? So they sent all these policemen out there to that farm, and they dug up that field looking for those guns, right? Looked everywhere, dug up everything. His dad was confused. He went back and said, wrote it to his son, and said, son, I don't understand, what you were talking about with those guns. They didn't find any guns. He said, well, Dad, now you can go plant your potatoes because your field is now dug up. He said, that's the best I can do for your stress while I'm here in prison. So even where you are, you can do good. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Many of you may know it. He was a very famous psychologist. What the book was about was his life and the psychological impacts of his life while he was in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. His mother, his father, his brother, and his pregnant wife were all tortured and killed. Every one of them. He described in chilling detail how that even his basic human dignity was taken away from him, that there was nothing left to hold on to except for one thing. And this is what he says. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. What he told them is that you cannot take that away from me. You can torture me. You can do things to me. That is a stimulus. You can cause me to cry out in pain as response, but you cannot take away what's between those two things. How I choose to respond. Do I choose to hold on to it, or do I choose to let it go? I, and only I, have that choice, that freedom. And all that indignity that was happening to him at that time, he says, I have that human freedom and choice inside myself. And that kept him going. And has kept a lot of people going after reading his book ever since. Because that's what we have. We have that choice. We can choose, in the midst of our pain, our loss, we can choose to say, oh, I got to suffer. This is just terrible, God. You did this to me. This is suffering. This is terrible. Or you can say, I have a choice here. I can choose. Just call it what it is, which is pain, loss, whatever, and not have to make it into a story. Because that's what we do. We make our misery into a story about, ain't it awful? How terrible is it? Look at me, a good person, well, most of the time, but look what all these horrible things happening to me. I suffer so much through my life. Oh my God. We make a big story out of it. So we suffer, we suffer, we suffer, and we suffer. And it's a cycle. We'll only end when we make that choice that we want it to end and to say, this is what it truly is. This is not God doing something to me. This is not some kind of suffering that I have to go through. This is just isness. It's just stuff. It's just pain. It's just loss. But there's something more that will be given in return. For whatever is lost, more will be given. Whatever pain you have, joy will be there. If you choose to believe that. If you choose to think that, yes, God is good. But what do we do when we get into psychological, physical pain? We interpret that pain signal with our internal self-talk, our beliefs, that drives our emotional reactions. Suffering results from mental and emotional responses to pain. Our response to pain, not the pain itself. Pain is nothing more than something saying, your body, our life saying, something's wrong here. Something needs to be looked at. Something needs to be fixed. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not suffering. It's just saying, look at this. Look to what's happening. Correct it. I'm trying to help you here. What happens with chronic pain and people who suffer from chronic pain is that cycle is never broken. The pain happens. The response to pain is to tense up. The muscles tense up. Their body tenses up. They just go, oh, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. And of course, guess what? They're not able to stand it. You have to let it go and look at it for what it is and know what it is and not amplify those pain signals, whether it's from a loss or whether it's from a physical ailment. And we look around this Sunday, we say, geez, look at all the stuff that's been going on. I mean, what is this, right? Bev is in the hospital. We lost Kayla. We didn't lose her, but we have her in our hearts, but she's not here with us. We even lost Tammy and Princess Layla. We've lost so much. We have Doug Walters, my dear friend for decades, who you know is a member of this church. Just had a heart attack this week. He's fine now, but he had to have 5 stents put in. We know Celia, wonderful lady, looking forward to my class today, all excited about it. She called yesterday evening and says, I just fell down and broke my arm in 3 places, and I'm in pain and I can't make it. But this is her. She says, I'm in pain right now, but it's no big deal. I'll get over it. This is a woman who's had 3 heart attacks, I don't know how many strokes, and all kinds of ailments, it's fallen, I don't know how many times. She still says, I'll get over it, it's not a big deal. And you know what? She gets over it, and it's not a big deal. That's the kind of person she is. That's the kind of person that we need to look at being ourselves. Instead of wallowing in whatever it is, we know that whatever loss, whatever pain, it is a birthing process. Malcolm, are you here? Here, it's Malcolm. At the board meeting, not Malcolm, but Martin. I'm sorry, Martin. Hello, Martin. Martin was talking about it at the board meeting, which is so true, and I love it. I love this analogy. He said that when his wife was pregnant and gave birth, it was a very painful process. He said he could do something to take the pain away. It was so horrible to even watch. He said the moment that the child was born, all the pain went away, and the beauty and the love and the grace of God took it over. So thank you for that analogy, Martin. I think it's very true. This is all a birthing process that we're going through. It's all about coming out on the other side. And we do that by not clinging and holding to what must be. How many people grew up in a Christian church that believed in suffering? So many people of us have, you know. This is like the big thing in Christianity, right? If Christ suffered, by golly, we better suffer even more, right? I mean, it's what it's all about. I grew up listening to that in the Baptist church I went to. You know, we're born to suffer. That's what it's all about. But I want to tell you something. Christ suffered on the cross for 3 days, but he lived 30 years talking about what love truly is and how good God is. His whole life was about teaching the goodness of God, the love of God, and how it's God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. He didn't talk about suffering, but yet Christianity over thousands of years has interpreted that to mean, oh gosh, we got to suffer. He said no, just the opposite. He said, you believe, and it will be given unto you. He didn't say you had to suffer for 20 years and then maybe, God might grant you a nice wish or two. He said it's given unto you freely. That was his message, not suffering. So instead of a cross, I like to wear a dove or a heart, because I think that's more of what his ministry was all about. That's what he was all about. That's what our life needs to be all about. It's not about suffering. But let me tell you something. There are 10 things that I can show you, or tell you about, to let you know if you're suffering or not. It's the top 10 of suffering. You ready for this? Number 10, you're so miserable, you now answer the phone, hello, this is hell. Number 9, your friends call to ask you how you've been, and you immediately start shouting out, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Number 8, the garbage can is where you wonder you put your valuables. 7, you wake up to discover that your bed's on fire, but you go back to sleep because you really don't care. Number 6, you had so much on your mind, you forgot to even go to the bathroom. Visions of the upcoming weekend helps you only to make it through Monday. Number 4, you don't set your alarm anymore because your anxieties wake you up before your alarm does. Number 3, the first words out of your mouth in the morning is, I'm sorry. And number 2, each day seems to be a bad reflection of the last one, and you're terrified that you may break that mirror and don't see how awful it is. And number 1, you think about how relaxing it would be if you were in jail right now and you don't deserve parole, so you make the most of it. This is how you know you're suffering. But we all suffer. Eckhart Tolle told this story about a duck. He said, these 2 ducks came together and they had this horrible, horrendous fight. They just really tore each other's feathers in, just went at it big time. Just a lot of hostility, a lot of intense alteration. Then they separated. Both of them made a great show of ruffling and shaking their feathers and their wings and going, "Argh." Then it all goes back to normal. And they all just walk away from each other and the flock is fine. Well, we as humans are different, aren't we? We have what we call consciousness. And what that means is we're able to remember memories, and we're also able to project our visions out into the future. And how many of those memories that we hang on to are painful, and how many of those visions we put out in the future saying, ain't it awful? We have, as human beings, the choice, as Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response. But then sometimes, because of all the pain that we cause ourselves, being a duck doesn't sound too bad, does it? You want to know what evil is? Evil is the cringe to the things we label as evil. It's what we call suffering. We surrender our freedom, we surrender our lives over moment to moment. That could be our moment to moment living over to suffering, to what we label as evil and horrible things. We need to be in defiance of pain and say, pain, I hear you, tell me what you need, then leave me. We don't need to wallow in our own stuff. It's like being shot by an arrow and then taking that arrow out and stabbing yourself multiple times over and over again. Oh, I got shot with an arrow, let me shoot it some more. We do that with our suffering. That's our suffering. We keep shoving that arrow back in and in and in and in. Well, all we need to do is let it go and let it heal. Shakespeare said we die 1,000 deaths before we die. The damage we do ourselves to our minds far exceeds any actual events that ever happen. You know that? Most of the catastrophic, horrible things are right up here, not out there. That said, I've been a victim as well of my own mind for years. And it continues. That's why I teach and love mindfulness, because that way is the only way you can be mindful of what your automatic responses are going on in your head and in your body. It's not easy. No one said it would be easy. But we got to stop having our inner fireman trying to put out the flames of suffering with kerosene. We have to realize that's what we're doing. The Dalai Lama said this. He said, too much self-centered attitude, you see, brings isolation. Result is loneliness, fear, anger. The extreme self-centered attitude is the source of all suffering. How much suffering are we spending each day? What we have to do is take action with ourselves to become mindful of our responses from any stimulus, to come forth with who we know we are, and to quit blaming out there, quit blaming God, keep blaming other people, keep blaming bad drivers, whatever it may be. And realize it's all up here. All out there is good. All the other is illusion. We get to choose. It's our choice. Don Miguel Ruiz said this. He said, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. Make it a part of your daily routine. Say to yourself every day, may I be well? May I be happy? May I know suffering is optional and I choose love instead. All suffering, all stress, all addiction comes from not realizing that you already are what you're looking for. That you're already that. When suffering knocks at your door and you say, I'm sorry, I don't have a seat for you to come in. You can't sit at my table. Suffering will just laugh and say, oh, it's okay, I brought my own stool. So what you got to do is you got to say, no, I will not let you in. This is my house. It is a house of love. It is no place for suffering here. And remember that no heart ever suffers when it's in search of its dreams. No heart suffers when it searches for its dreams. Know this to be true, that many more wonderful pursuits are in life than the incredible waste of time and suffering. Pain passes, while love is eternal. That's the gift that you have received from God. Don't waste it on insisting that you need to call it suffering anymore. God bless you.